One of the best ways that we can reduce fees and commissions is by adding the paid up additions rider. One of the common mistakes is that we'll set up a policy that's base premium only, that there's no overfunding to it. Mm-hmm. And commissions on that can be upwards of 80, 90, 100% or more. Versus paid up additions rider, the PUA, we're talking somewhere between 0 and 8%, depending on which company you go with.
Money can be complicated. Let a nerd help you. We're here to demystify the complex nature of money by getting you answers from financial nerds and whiz kids. Welcome to Ask the Money Nerds, a weekly segment of the Wealth Labs podcast where we answer your most pressing money questions.
Welcome to this episode of Ask the Money Nerds. Have you ever thought about cash flow banking, that place where you overfund a cash value policy so it's protected from liability and bankruptcy, or it's protected from downsides with the market and still accessible along the way, but you find out with this thing called PUA, paid up additions, that when you put extra money in, there's fees attached. So what are those fees like? How do you manage and navigate those fees? We brought a money nerd with us today, Dale Clark, to be able to answer this question. And I've got with me, as always, Chief of Staff Stolba. What's up, Stolba?
Hey, Gunderson.
We've got Dale Clark with us.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, what's your nickname you refer to? The
Human ATM.
Human ATM. I was going to say the walking ATM. How did you get that nickname, Dale?
Well, I guess I just walked into it after helping people save millions of dollars in cash flow.
Mike Gandolfi is a client
nickname
of ours, Mike Gandolfi, and he called him the Human ATM on the phone with me once, like referring. He could remember. He's like, you know, the Human ATM. I'm like, oh, Dale Clark. He's like, yeah, that guy.
That's a great nickname.
I love it.
I walked away with Metropolitan. Right. So Human ATM is way better than that. It's only because I was working out at Orange Theory and drinking kombucha, so Garrett felt the need to call me Metropolitan.
She left Iowa and came to the big city of Salt Lake.
City.
Right.
Woo, so diverse. Okay, we're going to get into Jacob's question today. And it's rather long because we have some details, but it'll give you guys some good insights into a situation. So here's Jacob's question. He says, I've been watching several of Garrett's videos and I'm interested in cash flow banking. I do have a whole life policy, $250,000 with death benefit with a PUA rider, which is a paid up addition.
Look at you.
Woo! Yeah. Money nerd over here. And I'm starting my third contract year at age 37. I like the idea of a strategic place to park your cash, allow it to grow, and have liquid access among the other benefits. I like the purchasing a car example that is often used. I already have some nominal cash value and could start some larger PUA contributions, about $4,000 annually, to avoid the MEC, the modified endowment contract.
Look at you. What does that mean? What is a modified endowment contract?
Let's not take it too far.
Dale can tell us what it is.
Yes.
It's cool.
Do you want to chime in and tell us
Absolutely, yeah.
And then we'll finish reading the question.
It's an IRS guideline that basically defines how much you can overfund a policy using these PUAs without the policy becoming taxable.
Okay.
And so we have to stay below a certain limit, otherwise the policy becomes taxable.
And differentiate funding versus overfunding.
So traditional funding basically just means that you're paying a base premium toward the policy versus overfunding, which is basically buying additional blocks of life insurance on a one-time only basis. And it basically just supercharges the policy with extra cash. So overfunding is supercharging, funding is just paying the regular base premium.
Mm-hmm. And those amounts are different just depending on the person's circumstances,
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
All right, here's the second part of his question. However, I see that there is a load fee with each paid up addition payment, potentially ranging from 8% to 12%.
Does that seem high, Dale? I mean, what is PUA and with the companies that you've done business with?
So I was actually that's a great question because I think the industry average is probably 4 to 8%, not 8 to 12%. But there's a couple examples. Maybe we can go through that as we get to the end of the question because I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. He says, I haven't seen this talked about in any cash flow banking articles, videos across the internet. What are your thoughts about this fee? Even though I missed the boat, would a SDLIC... What's that?
Do you think he's talking about a single premium life insurance?
I think it's a specially designed life insurance contract that he's referring to.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a different way of calling it an overfunded whole life. It's just specially designed.
Oh, specially. Ooh, that's so enticing. Yeah. Specially designed. Okay. Mm-hmm. So would a specially designed insurance plan have been better to manage that fee along with managing early high cash value setup, term rider, et cetera? Or overall, my policy with NYL seems good with
That's
the
New
cash.
York Life.
New York Life seems
Helping
good.
you with the acronyms today.
There's so many in here today.
There are. This is a detailed question.
Yes, it's very thoughtful. So overall, my policy with New York Life seems good with the cash value rate, variable loan rate, et cetera. But I'd like to learn more what the industry standard is with this load fee. I'd appreciate your thoughts and any feedback about overfunding this policy. Thanks for your time and great content. So let's help Jacob out. Let's answer his questions.
There's a bunch of them. So
There is,
Dale,
yeah. So
talk about this fee.
first thing that I was going to mention is that New York Life is a phenomenal company. There's a lot of companies out there that are kind of fly-by-night carriers that you want to stay away from. But there's the big four, which is New York Life and Mass Mutual and Guardian and Northwestern Mutual. And there's a bunch of others that we can fit into that group as well. But phenomenal companies. So in terms of the policy that you have, I would definitely not cancel the policy. You need to keep this in place, for the rest of your life. It's true. We haven't really talked a lot about load fees, in our podcasts or, in our videos that we've done. So this is a really great question. And I was kind of thinking through this, as I was evaluating different companies, the industry standard is about 4 to 8% for the load fee. And every company is a little bit different. One of the primary carriers that I use is a company called Mass Mutual. And they actually have like 4 different types of PUA riders that you can select. But there's 2 primary. There's the LISR rider, and then there's the ALIR. LISR stands for Life Insurance Supplement Rider, which is basically paid up additions plus a term rider. And then the ALIR is an additional life insurance rider, which doesn't include any term insurance, but it's just, buying blocks of additional coverage through overfunding.
Which most of that's going to go to cash value.
Most of that's going to go to cash value. So the fee is 8% on the LISR and 7.5% on the ALIR rider. Okay. So pretty close to the higher end with Mass Mutual. Now you have to remember those fees are included in the overfunded premium, that PUA rider. So let's say your base premium is $10,000 a year, and then your PUA is another $10,000. That fee, that load fee, is included in that $10,000 bunch. So when you look at the projections and you look at the illustration, the cash accumulation and the growth is included in that chart. So 7.5 to 8% with Mass Mutual. Another carrier I do a lot of business with, Penn Mutual, actually charges 10% the first year, if you can believe that. So super high. But then in years 2 and on, so every year after, it's 5%, and it's fixed for life. So that's pretty common. Now, there are a few companies that I'm not a big proponent of, nor is Garrett. And we don't need to name names, even though we might later on. But they actually have a load fee of 0%. So on the first, 0 to 150%. So if your base premium is $10,000 and you want to put in $15,000 of PUA, there's no load fee. But as you go above that, it's 8%. And so different companies have different load fees, but it is worked into the illustration, the projections. So that's included in the internal rate of return.
So you get some death benefit and some cash value.
Correct.
And the internal rate of return is referencing the cash value, which is net of all your expenses.
That's exactly right. Correct. And
Okay.
that internal rate of return, typically in today's climate right now, is in the neighborhood of about 4 to 5%. So it used to be closer to 6%. I think some of the policies you set up, Garrett, were closer to 6% when you got them started.
Interest rates have been so low.
Yeah.
And they keep getting lower.
Right.
They can't really go too much lower than they are right now, but that means that the future performance could be lower, when you're projecting it out. So
correct. Yeah. In fact, one of the things that I will do when I issue projections or illustrations is I'll illustrate it like a 0.25% lower dividend interest rate, or maybe even 0.5% lower, just to give people a feel for if interest rates do decline, that you can look at what that performance would look like.
So is the load fee just a one-time thing when you're initiating a policy?
It is.
Okay.
It is. So the load fee, and that's the interesting thing. Part of the reason there's a fee is because you're buying a block of life insurance with it. And so there's a fee for the cost of that death benefit. But it's a one-time fee. Once it's paid, the policy, that portion of the policy is fully paid up for life. So there's no ongoing fees or, commissions or anything on that.
Yeah. So Garrett, you've mentioned you've set up multiple policies, and we know a lot of people within our circle who have done that. So every time you initiate a new policy, you're paying a new load fee.
Correct.
Okay.
If you add the paid up additions rider.
Okay.
Yeah, and even when I make the new deposit each year or each month, however you set it up, I'm paying it every time there's a deposit.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not just a one-time thing. It's a one-time for that deposit. Then it just earns whatever dividends it earns. But when I make the next deposit, and with PUA, usually have flexibility depending on the company, where some companies you can put in $100 a year minimum, and then you can do more than that. Other companies, if you want to do more, you have to apply for a paramed, and they take your, urine and blood to find out if you're still qualified for more insurance based upon health. So, it's not uniform, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that regard, would it be best if people just did an annual payment to avoid the load fee instead of doing it on a monthly or quarterly basis?
So the load fee applies whether you pay monthly or annually. There is a modal premium fee that you'll pay that can be an addition on top of that.
So if you can pay annually, you actually save a percentage.
Right.
Because when you pay monthly, what they're essentially doing is saying, oh, we've lent you the annual premium and you're paying us back over the year. So it's almost like a loan. So it says it's 3% typically, but when we amortize it, it operates higher than that. Because remember, you're making payments every month.
Yeah.
And your balance is kind of going down, but it's 3% of the overall. Well, that would be fine if you paid once a year, but because you're paying monthly, it actually makes it a little bit more expensive. So I have some policies I pay monthly, but I try to pay them annually.
Right. I do the same thing. And so, Jacob, one of the things that I'd suggest is that on this policy, if you have the ability to put in $4,000 a year in paid up additions, do it in a one-time lump sum basis and make sure that you do it. It's really, in my opinion, one of the secret sauces that makes the policy work so well. So really, really important that you do it. Also, you talked about fees and commissions. One of the best ways that we can reduce fees and commissions is by adding the paid up additions rider. One of the common mistakes is that we'll set up a policy that's base premium only, that there's no overfunding to it. And commissions on that can be upwards of 80, 90, 100% or more. Versus paid up additions rider, the PUA, we're talking somewhere between 0 and 8%, depending on which company you go with. So much better, more efficient use of the money than if you just go with a straight premium policy.
Okay. So when would be a situation when someone would consider not doing a paid up addition? Is that a recommendation you make, or
Almost never.
Okay.
I can't think
Tight
of a time.
cash flow, just not having the cash flow to do it.
Right. Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll set up a policy with the PUA, but most companies have flexible riders. And so if for whatever reason, like we're COVID-19 environment right now, you can't afford to pay the PUA, just drop it off for 6 months or 12 months and then pick it up the next year.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is if you get in a tight position, can you drop that rider? And so
Absolutely.
you answered that question.
And you really don't want to drop it off completely, because then you have to go do a new medical exam to get it back added on. So temporarily
Do the minimum.
pause. Yeah, or do the minimum, which is usually about $300 a year.
Okay.
Okay, so when it comes to PUA and how to overfund, it's important to understand what's going on. So Dale works with a company called Garrett, and if you go to cashflowbanking.com, you can secure an appointment, and you can analyze your existing policies, see what it looks like to set up another one, and find out if this is right for you. All right, you have the opportunity now to turn your thoughts into profits and build the life that you love.